Lane, thanks for joining us. Guys, thanks for joining us on the Advisory Board podcast. I've got a special guest with me today. This is Lane Monson. Lane's he's a special guest because Lane's actually my personal coach, my executive coach. I've been working with him for the last year, and I won't lie, I was a little skeptical of the idea, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But when I met the first time, I was like, you know what, this is actually, Lane, he started his career, he's been in sales and marketing and leadership for so long. He started with IBM. He's led sales teams that produced $250 million a year in revenue. He's worked in as CEO, COO. He's been in all sorts of executive roles. And correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Lane, but he's been leading companies from 16 million a year up to major channel organizations with huge software organizations. So Lane's got so much leadership and personal experience that I found him extremely valuable. And we'll come back to that in a minute, but still surprised that we ended up working together. I should mention Lane's the founder of Platinum Circle Coaching. And so Lane, tell me, what did I forget? I don't want to laugh too much, but tell us a little bit more about yourself.
No, just well done. You've definitely got to know me well over the last year and vice versa. And it really has been an honor and a pleasure for me, Dave, to be with you during this last year of your journey. And just to see you go through significant growth and to see your company grow along with you has been really exciting. And so just a super generous introduction, and I'm grateful for that. I think one thing that I would add that you didn't mention is my experience in and around the franchise world.
Yeah.
As a teenager, I actually worked for one of my dad's best friends who was a franchisor, owned a chain of restaurants, and then he also owned a couple of his own locations, a couple of his own restaurants. And so I started working for him when I was a teenager as a busboy and worked all the way up to assistant manager before I went off to college. And I know you have many of your clients who are in that franchise world. Mm-hmm. And then eventually later on in my career, I actually left the corporate world for a time and bought into a franchise and ran a couple of my own restaurant franchises as a franchisee. So I've got kind of both sides of that experience as well. Today, as you know, I work exclusively with CEOs, business owners, and their top executive teams. Mm-hmm. I've sat in their chair, as you mentioned. I've experienced their experiences, their trials, their challenges that they face every day, and that really has put me in a unique position to be able to sit across the table from them, or even side by side at the table, and really understand what they're going through. And I know you know this, but for others that might be questioning the value, especially at this time, of engaging with coaches or mentors, my job really is just to provide insight and encouragement, which heaven knows we need a lot of that right now, and accountability to make some decisions and to move forward, and just to ask those high value questions that help us both understand what is keeping these leaders, these executives, and their businesses from getting to that next level of success and achievement. And mm-hmm. So, we just explore the options, the choices, the decisions that will most likely take them to that next level. So you mentioned your skepticism, and I remember that first conversation. You were very candid about that. It's like, Lane, I don't know. So tell me a little bit more about. Remind me of what it was that kept you skeptical.
Well, I think it's funny, and for people listening, that know me, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I tend to be fairly analytical and skeptical, and so I've been a coach. I coach accelerated baseball. I've done that for many years. We've always had good teams. That's often because the player's not the coach, unfortunately. But I get this world of like sports coaching, performance coaching, but there's so many like charlatans in the coaching space that are pretenders. They've never achieved much in life, and yet they decide to fall into coaching. And I don't mean any disrespect, because there are plenty of wonderful and talented coaches out there, you being one of them. But I've always been kind of skeptical of how coaches, they kind of created this hustle porn industry where it's like, I'm just going to beat you up over the phone and like say, hey, did you get that done? Did you get that done? And that's kind of what a lot of coaching sweatshops are. And so I thought, I don't need any more of that garbage in my life. I keep myself very accountable. And if I'm not, my wife is, and my kids keep me accountable to get crap done. So I didn't feel like I needed it, and I didn't have time. And I wasn't sure. I just wasn't sure what it would help me accomplish. Because
Yeah.
part of the reason why I was seeking it though was I knew I, just like everybody else, have plenty of blind spots.
Yeah.
And when you're, especially when you're running a company, uh, people are hesitant to shoot you a square between the eyes and say, you know what you're struggling with? It's this,
Yeah.
boss. Like, people don't
Yeah.
want to tell you that stuff. So I thought, that's kind of, after meeting you and understanding the depth of your experience, but also realizing I need someone who's going to be honest with me
Yeah.
and help me see where I got some challenges I need to work through, culturally, personally, and professionally, just to round out who I am, so I can be a higher performer.
Yeah. Oh, I that brings back just a lot of memories. And in fact, I'm thinking of actually one of our most recent conversations over a 2 week period. And you may remember the one about the pathway.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
mind if I share that one? You're gonna have to be pretty vulnerable for me to to
No,
share this one.
please do. People that know me will laugh. My wife, if she listens, will be like, "Yep, the pathway."
Yeah. Oh, I know, because she's been right in the middle of that one. So as an executive coach, I also take the role of personal advisor, because what I have found is what shows up in the workplace as a leader oftentimes is also showing up in other places. Your home, your church activities, your coaching baseball clubs you belong to, whatever. And I remember one of the tendencies that we identified early on is that you are definitely an idea person, very active mind, always coming up with new and better and different ways, the classic entrepreneur mentality. And so there's a lot of positives with that, but the shadow side, or the downside, is that it's a lot easier to start projects than it is to finish, and that one of your challenges is feeling like you had 10 balls in the air all of the time, and I just need to complete some of these before I add more. And yet it's fun to grab another ball and throw it up there.
Mhm.
And so I remembered at home, it's like, Lane, we started this amazing pathway out in our backyard, and we got about halfway done, and then I realized that we needed to do some remodeling in our bathroom, in the shower. And so I started that project, and now my wife's asking me, Dave, when are you going to complete some of these things? And I loved the text that I got from you this last week that said, hey, by the way, we completed the pathway on, I think it was last Wednesday or Thursday evening, and I'm almost now done with the shower. So that stuff, just whatever you're working on, works in business and at home. So thanks for letting me share that.
No, no worries. I'm glad you did. And we should change gears, because this podcast is definitely not about me and my pathway, but there's
Yeah.
some really critical things going on in the world right now. And the reason I wanted to invite you was to talk about some of the challenges that are in the world right now, because I think
Perfect.
the thought processes, the mindset management, the things that you and I have talked about the last year, they just seem super relevant right now, and especially with some of the things going on with the civil unrest, which is, this is
Yeah.
not political commentary, but I think merited, but in some cases a little bit out of proportion. There's a lot of
Yeah.
challenges in thinking, coupled with the financial crises that we're going through. It's really a tumultuous marketplace right now. So one of the things that I've seen is that that business executives, leaders, people, they there's uncertainty, there's fear, they don't know what to do. There's a little bit of paralysis in some cases,
Yeah.
where there's overreaction. So I was going to ask you, like, what are some of the things you're observing as you're coaching multiple executives,
Yeah.
and what is some of the core advice that you think derive from the challenges they're facing that would be relevant to the audience listening today in the franchising community, and
Yeah.
with business owners?
Yeah. That's just such a great topic and a great question. And it comes up frequently with, not only in business, but in personal conversations. It's on everybody's mind. And so here are some of the insights that I'm getting. And, you talked about coaches in athletics. And when I think of athletics, I think of the seasons. And even right now, there is no season. It's the weirdest thing we've ever experienced. No basketball, no baseball, no nothing. Although some of that's starting to come back. But we really are in one of the most challenging seasons that I've experienced in my career, and maybe only rivaled by the 2008 financial collapse. And I had just taken a job change and become an executive at a new company in May of 2008. And of course, from there, it was huge challenges. And so what we're observing, what I'm observing really is the following. Every one of my friends and family and clients has been impacted. Everyone. And yet each person that I speak with is experiencing this season in very different ways. And some almost ecstatic about how it's impacting their business, even though they feel horrible about the deaths and the disease and other things going on. And so what seems to be bothering and frustrating most people is really uncertainty. You mentioned it. It's that uncertainty. This is different. I'm not used to this. What's going to happen? And you might have heard this before, but uncertainty and even change breed fear and anxiety. So if you're feeling fearful, afraid, anxious, or even worried, that's most likely what's causing that. And then fear breeds more fear and indecision and sometimes even anger. And worry breeds more worry and loss of confidence and even doubt. And then you throw on top of that, either the business is exploding, which is a challenge in and of its own. It's a good challenge to have, but nonetheless stressful. Or you throw in that your business is imploding and you really don't even know if you're going to be able to keep your doors open. Equally stressful, just different kinds of stress. Right. So the only other thought on this that's coming to me is, more people are running their business from those states of fear, doubt, indecision, less confidence, worry, and even anger. So pay attention to that. Just pay attention to that. How am I feeling and where is that coming from? And spend more time than you normally would in conversations with people that you trust, people who care about you, people who are knowledgeable, and seek to understand how they are doing and what's going on with them. Dave, we've had those conversations. How are you doing? What's going on with your family? How are your employees feeling? What about your customers? What's going on in their businesses right now? And what are you doing to reach out to them and to find ways that you and your company can serve them beyond where you have in the past? And on the other hand, reach out to those that you trust. Maybe there's somebody that just seems to be weathering this storm really, really well, and reach out to them and share what's going on with you and ask them to encourage you. So really it's just more of those conversations. How can you serve? Where can you serve? Where can you make a difference for your customers, clients, partners, and then reaching out to those that you have confidence in? That makes sense?
Oh, no, I like it a lot. I mean, one of the things that I've observed when people are afraid or just uncertain is
Yeah,
they can get paralyzed. That they get into these thought loops, these negative thought processes. They question all of their decisions. They saps their confidence, and they make bad decisions. They also pull away from people. I've
yeah,
noticed that too. In fact, I've got family members that do that. When things are rough, they tend to like
yeah,
disappear for a while. And then all of a
yeah,
sudden they go up and they tell you about these awful paths they've been treading on their own. And you're like, good heavens, would you call, or would you answer my phone calls when I call you so I can help you? Or at least
yeah,
because just having a human connection, feeling like you're not alone is
yeah,
tremendously valuable. That's why I love, even social media is a bit obnoxious sometimes for me, but I love the professional communities on LinkedIn where you have people that are authentically saying, "Hey, I'm mortified right now. Like I don't know what to do,"
yes,
and with among their peers, and they can get feedback. It's why I'm a part of. I host a mastermind on a monthly
yeah,
basis. I love that because you've
yeah,
got connection points with people that you can share. You can't tell everyone. I wouldn't recommend broadcasting your fear on LinkedIn necessarily, but to your trusted
right,
advisors, friends, and coaches, advisory boards, whoever. Having those discussions, I think it helps people to realize that this fear is either it's mostly irrational, and no matter what's going on in the economy, you can't change that. So if you can focus on your own, like what are the things that I have control over? Let me put my energy into that.
yeah,
That I see a lot of people really coming ahead, and it sparks innovation, and they find a complete happiness and contentedness, even though everything's in turmoil around them. So,
Yes.
what would you say?
Yeah.
You're more of the guru than I am in this world, but what are some of your thoughts on that, Lane?
Yeah. Well, both from an experience perspective as well as from a training perspective, what is it that employees and customers look for in the leaders of their suppliers and in the companies that they work for? What do they look for? One of those you mentioned, which is just authenticity. You know, if I'm the CEO of the company and our revenues are down and I'm going, you know, walking around like everything's great and everybody's worried about if they're going to lose their job or if the company's going to be in business, just to be very, very authentic and even vulnerable to say, you know what, these are unprecedented times. We're going through some real challenges. You know, a CEO that I used to work for just recently got everybody on an all hands call, and he said, you know, several things. Number one is we are we're going to put on a hiring freeze for now because our number one goal is to retain our existing employees
Mhm.
and to serve our customers. That's how we're going to weather this storm. So we're going to retain our employees. We're going to cut back on contractors. We're going to cut back on unnecessary expenses for right now. You know, anything that's not critical to running our business. And we're going to serve our customers, and we're going to make more phone calls, and we're going to have more contact with our customers. So, you know, he was very clear on that, and also very clear that if there are further downturns in revenues, then like everyone else, they're going to have to consider, you know, a reduction in the workforce. But you know, this is just reality and where we are, and we're going to do everything that we can to retain our employees. So authenticity, giving them hope, you know, that's something else. You know, encourage them and give them hope and give them direction. Here is what we are doing. Here are the changes we are making. We can't control coronavirus. We can't control the political unrest. You know, that is beyond our control. We're going to influence wherever we can. We're going to be great corporate citizens
Mhm.
and great world citizens. But here's what we're going to do as a business so people know. You reduce their uncertainty, which then decreases their level of concern and worry.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Certainly been through a couple of, I remember in the 2008 downturn, I worked for a company that was a specialty manufacturer. I just moved across the country with my family, and
Yep.
I could see the writing on the wall. So I had actually just at this point started looking for a new role, but I was, top performer in the sales group at the time, so I wasn't concerned about losing my job. That would have been insane, but I remember they ended up doing some layoffs, and the CEO, they only had about maybe 75 people, 100 people in the company, and I think they had to lay off about a third or a quarter. It was a big chunk, a lot
Yeah.
of production people, and I remember him crying actually in the meeting, and not in desperation, but just like he could
Yeah.
tell he cared, and
Yeah.
but I felt like at that time I thought I would work for him the rest of my life. Like he's a
Yeah.
genuine, caring person, but he also explained what they had to do and why. And so
Yeah.
and it was right after they did the layoffs, and so nobody else felt concerned and worried. They were sad because their friends and colleagues were gone, but they didn't have
Yeah.
an emptiness after that. People were actually fiercely loyal to the company
Yeah.
because they were open about what was going on.
Yeah.
They took the corrective action, and then they
Yeah.
also told everybody, this is the pivot that we've made. This is why we did this and this and this, and now we're in a good position to weather the storm. And they're actually doing
Yeah.
phenomenal. They came out of that. Uh,
That's awesome.
and so, anyway, leadership's important right now, especially with.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, it's interesting that you would just share those examples, because what I see is clearly, number one, people are concerned for the families who have lost family members due to coronavirus, or who have those that now have coronavirus and that could happen. They're, you know, in the hospitals or you know, in bed at home. So that's number one. And then it gets down to how do we protect our families from coronavirus, and if we're living in, you know, in bigger cities, how do we protect ourselves from some of the looting and rioting that's been going on? So
Mhm.
so it gets into that kind of a mode, and then from there it gets into the finances of your company, and how do we keep our company intact? How do we minimize the negative impact? How do we retain employees? And then, as I mentioned earlier, in those businesses that are exploding right now, is how are we going to keep up with this and still serve our serve our customers and our partners. And it's interesting because every business right now has an opportunity also to do some hiring and to bring in some amazing talent, because there are businesses through no fault of their own that just things have, I remember passed through Las Vegas just right after everything was shut down, and walking through the baggage claim area, and there were 8 of us total there, and I've never been through that baggage claim where it wasn't just shoulder to shoulder. That's when the realization really set in with me, is a lot of people are gonna lose their jobs. But as a business owner, that's when I would exactly be looking for those people that have been displaced and bring in some really great talent. So that's another potential pivot. And then just question everything you're doing, and talk to your employees and talk to your partners. And if you're a franchise owner, talk to the franchisor, and if you're a franchisor, talk to the franchisees. Figure out, how do we help each other, weather this storm, and improve those relationships.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. You said the word pivot, and that made me think of a couple of observations I've had recently. A lot
Yeah,
of, I see kind of a polarization. There are a lot of businesses that kind of put their heads down and say, "Well, we'll just work our way through this, and stay the course, stay the course, stay the course." Now, I totally respect that, and it's not necessarily the wrong choice. That's not me casting judgment, but I've also seen a lot of other folks that are maybe not as numerous, but are saying, "Okay, this is completely new. How do we pivot to make sure that we're able to accommodate this new normal that we're in?" And I know some
yeah,
people hate that term, but the reality is we're not going back. So we have to
yeah,
embrace the current situation, and maybe even try to predict where everything's going to go. But how do we take advantage of the current situation in the marketplace? You mentioned one. There's just an amazing a volume of people that are very talented that are available and are
yeah,
really willing to work hard right now, because they realize,
yeah,
because they've lost their job, and there are a lot of people in that situation. People
yeah.
are very eager to work. Where in the
So
previous
that's one.
was doing great, people are becoming a little more complacent, I think.
Yeah, so that's definitely one. Is now is the time to go pick up added talent. For talk about coaching a team. If you're the leader of the team, pick up your talent now. Um, and this may be the best time, either since you started your business or since you stepped into a business and took charge of it, to question everything and take a step back and really understand, why was my business created in the first place? What is our mission? What is our purpose? What are we trying to accomplish here? And talk about taking a pivot. If you can take where you've been and really tap into, where am I going, and just shift that business towards that true north. This is also an amazing time, and I, like you, belong to a mastermind group, every Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning, and it's all coaches. And and the conversations we've been having are amazing, because the first thought was, oh boy, the first thing that's going to go is people's coaching budget, consulting budgets, training budgets, etc. But what we're finding is just the opposite. Is that in our world, if you let that get into your mindset, you could just say, why even try? Or you can go, you know what, people probably need us now more than ever, because they're in this place of uncertainty. So spend time with your CPA and your tax advisors, and talk with them about how to take advantage of some of the relief funds that are out there. Talk to your if you're in a franchise business and you're a franchisee, talk to the franchisor and pick their brain, and vice versa. Talk to your customers right now. What do you need right now? And maybe they start telling you about some things you haven't been delivering that you can now add to your product line or your service line, immediately. And figure out which of your customers, not only the ones that are suffering that you can help survive, but the ones that their businesses are taking off, and go serve them. You could grow your business possibly just on some of those customers that are just exploding right now, because maybe they make hand sanitizer products, toilet paper or bottled water or whatever it is. So it really is, if you just raise your level of awareness and have more of these conversations with people that maybe that you're not used to doing that with, or you don't do as much of it, now is the time to do that.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think you and I could talk about pivoting a lot, but I feel like the last thing that you said is the most important. Talk to your customers. I was in a meeting with some very crucial customers, and actually this was a prospective customer, and because of all the pivoting in the market, like in the needs for remote estimating, I mean, in the service industry, it's it's going to lead us down the path where we're introducing video chat tools within our sales automation platform, and that was something that was on our long-term roadmap, and it's going to get pulled in sooner and provide value to everybody. I thought, what,
Yeah,
like what a good way to drive innovation, to see, to hear from the customer what do they need in the marketplace, and then to prioritize that need over something else that we designed earlier that we wanted to put in the roadmap. I really, that to me is kind of energizing, because I know it's exactly what the market needs rather than us guessing what the market needs. So yeah, you
yeah,
got.
and I've certainly seen plenty of that, and I even remember last fall when the economy was great, and you and your team and your investors taking a step back and saying, okay, we've had a really good last run over the last few months. Where have we been most successful? Where are we the strongest? And where can we put a little more fuel on the fire from a marketing perspective?
Mhm.
And rather than just trying to be everything to everyone, to really narrow down where do we best serve the market, and what's that done for your business over the last few months, right? I mean, it's just continued to grow. So
Yeah,
kudos on that, and that was just from taking a step back and really paying attention.
yeah. Yeah, that one, that's a long discussion, but a good one. Probably something we should do a podcast about is identifying, how to pivot, how to focus. But we'll talk about it another time. Lane, I want to,
Yeah,
something else that I wanted to ask you about. So I know you've been a franchisee. You've worked in the
yeah,
franchising network since you were a teenager. So
yeah,
15, 20 years or so of experience.
yeah, 5 or 10.
But you've also coached franchisees. One of the things that
Yeah,
I see, because we work with franchisors a lot, that's kind of our target space that we work in. And
yeah,
one of the things that I've observed a lot is, and especially now when there's a little bit of market turmoil. In fact, Christian Thompson in a previous podcast, we talked about franchise legal, and he brought this up and really shared some deep insights. So if you haven't heard that one, take a listen to that podcast, because he shares some great insights about how to manage from a legal and process perspective, conflicts from or innovation from the franchisees. But what I see
awesome.
is this angst between the ZOR and the Z.
Yeah,
Franchisors, they say, hey, you bought into our business model. Just like, will you just work within our paradigm here? Like, stop trying to change everything. And
yeah,
they
just follow the rules.
just follow the rules, right? But
Yeah,
then you've got the franchisees that are, a lot of them, serial entrepreneurs, very intelligent business people, men and women, and they want to take what's good, and then they want to innovate, and they want to change, and they want to keep working on it. So there's this natural conflict that
yeah,
usually creates a lot of angst. Honestly,
yeah,
I see few examples where it's being really leveraged. Tell me from your perspective. I mean, what is some advice you have for franchisors, franchisees with this relationship? How can they make the most
yeah,
of it rather than let the angst of it kind of pull them apart and create us and them?
yeah. Yeah, just creating friction, right? Rather than being seamless and running smoothly, there's this underlying friction, and it really is a conundrum when you think about it. So when I was a franchisee, and something else you said, I just have to share this. Entrepreneurs are not rule followers for the most part.
Nope.
They're idea people. We're creating new and different things. We're breaking all of the rules, and then they've probably been in the corporate world, or they're just starting out in their careers and they want to go into business for themselves, and they're not quite sure what their product or their service is going to be. So let me go find something where they've already kind of created the model, so I get a start. And then they get in and find out, oh no, I've got all these restrictions again, and I got to play within this box. Am I really an entrepreneur, or am I kind of a quasi employee? So you're spot on. One of my biggest challenges was my own entrepreneurial spirit and wanting to add my own ideas and my own flair to the programs that the franchisor made available to me.
Mhm.
That was my perspective as a franchisee. So, love the franchise, love the products, love the way they created their business, and yet I wanted to have some of my own flexibility. And so my business was doing well, their business was doing well. So most of the time we just went on doing things the way that we were doing things. We didn't collaborate much. And for the most part, I followed the program. And as long as they didn't know, I would just kind of go do some of my own things, right? I mean, it's just kind of the life of a franchisee.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an adversarial relationship, but definitely not a collaborative one. And that's, as I'm looking back now, that would have made the biggest difference to me as a franchisee. And I believe to the franchisor as well, is to have more collaboration. So, I've been able to coach some franchisees over the past couple of years. One of them, in fact, the phrase he used was, Lane, the reason I'm hiring you is because I've exceeded all of the goals that I ever set in my life. I've become so successful that A, I don't know where to go from here, and B, I'm not sure that I can keep up with it. And so and they were struggling with the franchisor. The franchisor, you have to do it this way and you have to do it that way and you can't do it that way. And they felt they'd had growth and they loved that, but just really constrained. And so it's been difficult to hear these stories. And so here's my one word of advice, and especially right now in this time.
Mhm.
If you are a franchisor right now, CEO, president, head of operations, investor, owner, I want you to just take some time, just take a step back and ask yourself, what do my franchisees need the most right now in order to succeed? Number one. And number two, what advice do they have for me and for the other franchisees that will actually help raise the tide so it floats all of the boats?
Mhm.
So that takes a little bit of humility, because as the franchisor, you had the idea, you created the concept, you've clearly been successful, and yet we are in different times, and it's a great opportunity on both sides. And as you reach out to those franchisees and ask for their opinions, A, you're going to get them, definitely. B, just listen and don't shut them down immediately. Don't go into defensive mode. And the one phrase that I would use is, whatever they're sharing with you in terms of ideas or concerns they have, is find that one thing that makes the most sense and just say, what I like most about what you just shared with me is this. And that will give them that emotional oxygen that they need, and will increase their level of trust in you, and will increase their interest in even listening to what you as a franchisor have to share with them.
Mhm.
And on the other side, if you're a franchisee right now, do the same. Be vulnerable, reach out to the franchisor, tell them what you're experiencing, what you're going through, what your challenges are, what your worries and concerns are. And yes, share some of your ideas and your thoughts with them, but listen to them. They want you to succeed. If you're not successful, no royalties going to the franchisor, and then they start to struggle. And so if you're looking for the virtual downward spiral, don't talk to each other. Just
Yeah.
shut down your communications, withdraw, get upset with each other. But if you're looking to create that virtuous upward spiral, now is the time to have those conversations. And if you need to have somebody, to help, you know grease the skids, to help, mediate if some of the relationships are not that great, there are a lot of people out there that have had many of these conversations that would be happy to jump in and help. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but that
Yeah.
certainly has been on my mind.
No, and I really appreciate it. Good insights. And the part that I feel that I just, it really resonates with me is when you were talking about kind of developing more of a two-way communication process. What I feel sometimes as I'm working with franchisors, franchisees across very different concepts, or just observing from the outside or hearing people talk about it's, I think sometimes franchisors forget that they have essentially recruited this powerful network of this brain power, right? This brain trust.
Yes.
You hire 3 to 4 talented people on a regular corporate team, and that
Right.
the synergy, and I hate, the synergy word, right? It sounds so
Yeah.
cliche, but you really do get so much more out of that team because you've got such talented people in the group. But when you talk about entrepreneurs that are buying franchises, I mean, so oftentimes you're talking about a super high powered, high octane group of thinkers. And
Yeah.
so sometimes franchisors feel like they have to come up with all the answers themselves. Then the truth
Yeah.
is the franchisees don't expect it. In fact, it's the opposite. Oftentimes the franchisees say, hey, I've got an idea and I want to share that, and they feel stifled, or there isn't a
Yeah.
chance communication to communicate that in a way that's non-threatening
Right.
to the franchisor.
Right.
That's something I would say from my perspective looking in is create that channel and that safe communication medium where a
Yeah.
franchisee can say, hey, had this cool success, had this great idea, had this, and have some sort of mechanism where you're responding to them so they can feel like they're being heard, like you're saying, that emotional
Yeah.
oxygen. You can create that channel, that safe communication space,
Yeah.
then you'll get the two-way communication. The franchisees will feel heard, and you'll also
Yeah.
get crazy innovation. Now, the trick is some of the innovation you need to document, like Christian Thompson was sharing. You need to document it, create a time-bound exception to if it's something that's dictated in operating manuals. You got to be
Yeah.
careful with that. And that's why I think franchisors get a little bit itchy, iffy around it, is because, well, in the operations agreement it says we have to do it this way. Well,
Yeah.
you document an exception to that with a group of people to let them try it out, and if it ends up working, great. But you also have
Yeah.
A/B testing constantly within the franchise system, which I know a lot of them do. But man, it's
Yeah.
a really cool environment for collaboration and innovation if you can create that environment.
Yeah. No, you're so spot on, because there is freedom in structure. That's one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs forget, is that there really is freedom in structure. And the end to that is, but don't tie yourself just to structure. Give yourself some ability to color outside of the lines, or to make adjustments in the structure, because it can be too restrictive. So it's always that balance. Let's create a structure, let's create processes that work, and then let's be open to adjusting those over time.
It's funny, you're making me think about what Jed Morley shared last week about your brand promise, your brand commitment. Like you have
Yeah.
to document, where do we absolutely have to be inflexible. We are
Yeah.
inflexible in our brand promise and commitment to the customers about giving them a wonderful experience, in the quality of our
Yeah.
outcomes, in this and
Yeah.
that. You should document it. Everyone should understand this is the sacred cube we never.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
everything around you, like you should also create some flexibility and the ability for innovation in your
Yeah.
FDD, your franchise agreement, uh,
Yeah.
and, and obviously with the right parameters around it. That's why you have attorneys, and I'm not one, so find one.
Me neither.
But you have to create the sacred space, and then, but you
Yeah.
don't make it too big, and create lots of room for innovation and creativity, because that's where the franchise systems that explode. It's
Yeah.
because they've allowed some of that flexibility, and the innovation is what's allowed people to maneuver through the changes in the market. So
Yeah.
good
The
advice.
one last thought I would share with you that's coming to my mind is, as I mentioned earlier, question everything.
Hmm.
And I'm just feeling right now that there were several on the call going, no, wait, we're not going to question everything. But what I didn't say is change everything,
Yeah.
because there's this ability to do some mental creation and some mental rehearsal, and to think through it, and to try it out in your mind and draw it out on the whiteboard. That doesn't mean that you actually have to implement it and change everything. So that's all I'm saying, is just question everything, think about some new and different and better ways to do things, and then adopt the ones that make the most sense. That doesn't mean you have to change everything. So just wanted to clear that up before we finish.
No, I'm glad you said that. It also makes me think of one other thing, and this is something that you and I worked on, something that I picked up from you through our coaching, which is you also have to create space for creativity and strategic.
Yes.
Right now with the turmoil, it's so busy and people are kind of panicky. And when you get panicky, you don't stop, have peace and quiet time and say, okay, now let me look at this part of my business this week. Let me look at this part of my business this week. You can
Yeah.
systematically look at different sections of the business. If you're a franchisor, get your think tank together on a
Yeah.
regular business and say, let's analyze this part of the business, and then cycle through different parts of the business on a regular basis. So there's
Yeah.
systematically, you don't have everyone scattering around analyzing everything at the same time, trying to think about how to change everything. You can say,
Yeah.
let's look at our marketing process this time, and let's have everyone come. And CMO, VP of marketing, please be vulnerable and willing to listen. Let's all come up with ideas. What's working, what's not. CMO
Yeah.
lead discussion, right? And then next week we're going to talk about operations, or next month,
Yeah.
right? Give
Yeah.
yourself time to also act. So creating that space where you can think and be strategic is
Yeah.
critical. When you're so busy right now, it's hard to,
Yeah.
you have to discipline it, calendar it, and
Yeah.
then hold yourself accountable to it. Then you have time to really grow and think and expand and take
Yeah.
advantage.
As you know, it's very easy to spend all of your time working in your business and not spend any time working on your business. And I know we've talked about that many times, and I've looked at your calendar, and some hours are double and triple booked, and there's more colors on there than anybody I've ever seen. But the thing that I'm really proud of you that you have done is that you have very intentionally and very purposefully planned time and blocked out that time in your calendar that is sacred time for your think time, your creative time, and your working on the business time. And I really believe it's made a big difference in where you are today. And even with what you're doing now, it takes time to do what you're doing now. And yet for you, one of the top things is it's important to serve my customers, my prospective customers, my partners, and my employees. And every time you take time to do one of these, it's adding value to them. So I really applaud you for that.
No. Well, that's nice of you, Elaine. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you joining us and making time. I know you've got all sorts of priorities you've got to juggle right now.
Yeah,
And
I'm actually in my office on wheels, as you can tell, but I'm not driving, so I'm not fully, multitasking. I'm parked right now, but thank you for allowing me to do that and not having to be in my office or my home office.
yeah, no, I think it makes it more real. I was seeing cars drive by. I saw a guy stand next to you a while back, and I thought, hey, this is a real COVID-19, social
It
distance
is. Yeah,
podcast
man.
this time. Yeah,
It
Elaine,
is.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us again, and everyone, thanks for listening to the podcast. Talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Stay safe.